But it's human nature to fear the unusual. Perhaps I am a man. I have a name.
The holiday season is not just a time for family gatherings and ugly Christmas sweaters. Sure, we all love to sit around a warm fire with our loved ones and sip on Aunt Judy's famous spiked eggnog, or whatever your version of that may be. But the winter months are also a time of reflection, anticipation, and in some cases, the death of one thing and the rebirth of something else. After all, the wintertime signifies the death of leaves, grass, and the calendar year before everything gets born again in the spring. So naturally, it's the best time for one to cozy up on the couch and revisit those comforting movies that put us in a nostalgic headspace while we reflect on the year behind us. Such is the case for Tim Burton's second outing as the director who brought audiences into our dark Batman era in 1992's Batman Returns.
Eat floor. High fiber.
This is a movie that, like any piece of Batman media, gets talked about online exhaustively. Whether it's being praised for its boundary-pushing visuals and incredible casting, or it's being criticized for its shortcomings when being compared to the original, there is no doubt a lot to talk about when it comes to this caped Christmas time classic. But for me, this movie has always stood out, and especially in the lineup of movies that take place around Christmas, because it typically gets overshadowed by Tim Burton and Henry Selick's A Nightmare Before Christmas, which of course is an absolute banger from Halloween to Christmas every single year. But the truth is, there are a lot of topics left on the table when it comes to Batman Returns. You've heard about Danny DeVito's iconic performance as the Penguin, and you've of course seen the beautifully designed shiny black leather of Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman suit. But today, I want to get deeper than that and revisit this iconic sequel with one goal in mind: figure out what Burton was trying to say with what ended up being his final run at the big screen Batman, and see what we can learn from analyzing the film, its creators, and the themes that have stood the test of time for the last 30-ish years. Basically, I just want to know, what is Batman Returns really about? Batman Returns is Tim Burton's 1992 film which continues the story of Bruce Wayne and his darkly dreary city full of eccentric criminals. In this one, we see much of the film from the perspective of the Penguin, Catwoman, and of course the big guy himself. The film is a direct sequel to 1989's Batman, which established a Gotham City that leaned heavily into Burton's classic aesthetic sensibilities. In this film, the deep and dark Gothic sets are even further on display, with the entire movie having a gorgeous, crisp contrast and composition. While some may not have the same affinity for this movie as I do, Batman Returns offers a twisted Christmas-time tale that is fully loaded with black leather, action and combat, and of course artistic subtext that will help us figure out what this movie is.
Tell me if this is a theme that seems to run through. All the characters, Pee-wee, even Batman, they seem to be sort of schizophrenic characters. They seem to be no.
Isn't everybody in a way? I mean, that's why I like them all, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been attracted to characters that have splits and that are doing things for reasons that they are not quite integrated with and don't feel quite together. I guess that's because that's the way I feel most of the time.
Yeah,
so it's just things I can relate to.
So, in order for us to figure out what this movie's trying to say, I think it's probably appropriate to take a look at the film's creator. Tim Burton is widely known for his gothic yet whimsical visual style and haunting but always charming character work. Along with the Batman films, movies like Sleepy Hollow, Big Fish, and Edward Scissorhands rank among some of his best work in live action. And I think we can all appreciate his stop-motion and animated features as well. Burton often tells his tales from the perspective of society's outsiders. He likes to show us the lonely, dark, and beautifully tragic vantage points of things that we only dreamt of as children. And in the case of Batman Returns, all of the above rings true.
I believe the word you're looking for is
The film opens up with an upper-class Gotham City family on Christmas Eve as they prepare to welcome their first child into the world. When the baby is born and seen to be physically disfigured, the wealthy couple takes a cold winter's night stroll through the park with their new son, only to drop him into the freezing river to die in the sewers of Gotham.
I was their number one son, and they treated me like number two.
Now, that is one hell of a way to open a film. The scene is very cruel, but it's also effective in doing one thing, making us feel bad for the bad guy.
Who can hate a penguin?
Now, it's pretty common to have a movie villain whose backstory is just tragic enough to make us feel kind of bad for them. But this scene right here is letting us sit with this baby for the entire opening title sequence while Danny Elfman's iconic score swells. Now, seeing as Burton often states that he himself feels like an outsider, I think choosing to open this movie with this scene in particular is no accident. Burton wants us to see two things. First, he wants us to see what the upper class of Gotham is really like when they think nobody's looking. They're harsh, they're cold as ice. They are the villains. Next, Burton is showing us where this baby is starting so that we can understand just where he's going.
And there's just something about these characters that I just find very compelling in this world of night and the coolness of it. It's like you're inside of somebody's mind or something, and I just really, they're very psychological characters, and it's like a fairy tale characters in a way, or these kind of weird sort of symbolic images, and just all of those things created a good energy.
So, if we really want to continue to understand the movie, we next need to look into the movie's key players. This movie is great for many reasons, but one of them being that the film's story is taken mostly away from Batman and focused largely on Penguin and Catwoman.
To destroy Batman, we must first turn him into what he hates the most, namely us.
Now, I love a good Batman-centered story as much as the next guy, but I also think that sometimes Batman is a character that is more powerful in the side pocket of his rogues. Penguin's thing is that he originally just wants to find his parents, but when he kidnaps a powerful Gotham industrialist named Max Schreck, the two cut a deal to use Shrek's political pull to bring Penguin up from the sewers and rise to power as the mayor of Gotham. This is important to note because the theory I'm forming has quite a bit to do with that plotline.
You drive a hard bargain, Maxie. All right, I'll be mayor.
The movie also gives us a full origin for Selina Kyle, or Catwoman. She's a shy, self-conscious Gothamite who works as Max Schreck's personal assistant. Her deal is just that she was at the wrong place at the wrong time and ends up being pushed out of a window by Schreck to keep his company's secrets safe. When she's revived by some magical cats in an alleyway, she's reborn as an anarchic and acrobatic cat burglar who has it out for the system that failed her.
How can you be so mean to someone so meaningless?
She suffers being in a man's world and all of the
Suppressed rage.
the torture that goes along with
Being a woman.
I am Catwoman. Hear me roar.
Now, this could be a commentary on how outsiders are treated by the systems that they serve, being that Oswald was discarded by his parents simply for looking different, and Selina was murdered in cold blood by an elitist businessman as if her life and work had no value. These people were wronged and broken.
You killed me. The Penguin killed me. Batman killed me. That's 3 lives down. You got enough in there to finish me off?
Now, Penguin's way of processing his abandonment is that he wants to use Max's resources to become mayor. It's kind of like a if you can't join them, rule them sort of thing. He felt like he was never good enough for his own family, so he'll do whatever it takes to prove to the world that he is worthy of the same love as everyone else.
None of your characters, even Edward Scissorhands, any of those, they don't seem to have any superpowers. They don't seem to be people that can win,
screwed up people.
Screwed up people.
That's their superpowers.
That's what attracts you to them, is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I like Batman is that he seemed very modern to me that way, in the sense that he's not somebody who I don't know. I mean, I always had a problem with Superman. I just wonder why he just didn't, blow away everybody with his breath or something. This kind of thing has more, it just has more weird reality, but a nice kind of reality. And it just seemed kind of modern to me. It just seems sort of like the way things are.
Now, this movie certainly seems focused on damning the corporate system as it is, but I think it's highlighted expertly in the scene where Max visits Oz and presents him with the idea of being mayor. Max is a smooth-talking, manipulative type who uses those he sees as beneath him as pawns to serve his larger purpose. This is shown to us literally as Max dangles a raw, dead fish in front of Oz to entice him out of his room and into the mayoral pitch meeting. You can even see this from the way the shots are framed, with Oz being small and meek in the frame and Max being framed as imposing. Burton famously was constantly at odds with Warner Brothers over the direction of his film, with WB wanting to make a more light and fluffy popcorn movie that could sell merchandise, and Burton wanting to lean more into the German expressionistic style of gothic soapiness. So with that in mind, I can't help but see this scene as Burton writing his own experiences, being dazzled by the studio with the promise of fulfilling a dream, only to be nothing more than a tool in their box from the beginning.
Batman 1 was really the first big movie that I ever did, and I think any director will tell you, you can never fully prepare for the weird sense, the abstract sense of pressure that comes with that. I think that it's just there's more money, there's more things, and it just gets bigger. It becomes a bigger, weirder animal. And I felt about the first Batman I actually basically just didn't feel like I do on other movies that I've worked on. And I was just out to I love the material, and I just wanted to feel about the material like I do about the other movies. So I think there was a couple of new characters in Batman Returns, and I felt like I had a bit more grasp on it, and just wanted to make it another movie and a better movie. And I felt there was new elements that would make it fresh and different that way.
Now, as for Batman's involvement in the story, he is similarly broken like Selina and Oz, but we all know his story. In this film, Bruce is really facing a much more personal battle than previously. I mean, sure, he still needs to kick some ass and save the city, but he also needs to save Selina and Oz in ways that will challenge him as Batman and as Bruce Wayne.
You got kind of a dark side, don't you?
No darker than yours, Bruce.
See, Batman represents justice and looking out for the little guy. His whole purpose is to be a symbol of hope for a better Gotham and to save those that the system has failed. So while Batman wants to help these two, Bruce Wayne is in the very demographic that they both resent. Well, maybe not Selina. So I think of it this way. Tim Burton wrote Batman Returns as his own way of saying that those deemed as weak, unworthy, or otherwise different will one day inherit the Earth. He shows Batman's empathy for Penguin as if the two are in some way connected, because they are. They're both orphans who long for the love of their families, knowing that they can't have it. They both want to make their dead parents proud despite their unique ways of going about it. The Penguin is a victim that Batman needs to save from himself. And when the Penguin dies, it's not without Bruce's heartbreaking failure to save him, and by the time it all goes down, you aren't sure whether to cry or cheer.
His parents.
Again, this scene direct from Gotham Plaza, where we have just witnessed the emergence
I hope he finds
of the Penguin Man.
Bruce and Selina's relationship is a little bit different. Bruce Wayne is at odds with Max Schreck over the regulations of Schreck's factories. He's a common enemy for all of the players in the movie, but especially for Bruce and Selina. There's a scene midway through the film where Batman confronts Catwoman on a rooftop, and she says this line.
Who's the man behind the bat? Maybe you can help me find the woman behind the cat.
Well, that's exactly what happens when Bruce takes off his mask and Wait a minute. Where did his black eye makeup go?
Why are you dressed up like Batman?
Because he is Batman, you moron.
So, Bruce eventually does reveal his identity to Selina. And why? Because he wants to help her understand who she is by showing her who he really is. The two share a duality that is increasingly hard to reconcile, much like the duality of being an artist with a vision and competing with yourself to conform to the demands of the greater system. So when we look at all of these characters, we see one who will do anything to rule the elite, one that will do anything to destroy the elite, and one who wants to save them all from letting their own tragedies define them. Three people with three understandable perspectives who are seemingly at odds with each other, but are all connected by one simple truth. They're all freaks.
I mistook me for somebody else. Sorry.
You mean mistook me?
I mistook me. Yeah.
Batman Returns is a lot of things, but this Christmas, I got something more from it than I usually do. I learned that despite the tragedies that we all go through, and despite being used, jaded, and jerked around from life from time to time, it's never too late to make the right choices and follow what you know in your heart is the right thing to do, and occasionally saving the city from the very system that it serves.
Meow.